Welcome to Cyber AI Chronicles, Safeguarding Tomorrow, episode 2 of Cybermaze. We all know that cybersecurity and artificial intelligence is in the current world and is a very growing topic, and both of them goes hand in hand. In cybersecurity, we see a lot of artificial intelligence aspects as well. So today we have all these wonderful panelists with us. We have Luciana Salles from Cleveland Hub. We have Mike Brooks from Boston Hub, Valeria Tafoya from Curitiba Hub, Brazil, and we have Zino Haro from New York Hub. So welcome you all, and let's delve into the Chronicles of Cyber AI Chronicles and Safeguarding Tomorrow. So starting from Luciana, my first question to you is, how is artificial intelligence being integrated into cybersecurity frameworks to enhance threat detection and response?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I appreciate starting off with this question. I think that threat detection and response is just one of the many ways that AI is being integrated right now into cybersecurity frameworks as a whole. And I think that's because it's the easiest to grasp, the easiest to understand in the ever-evolving world of AI. To answer your question, I think that AI essentially leveraging ML algorithms is what's at the back end of all this, because you can automate detection, you can handle large volumes of data, and you can identify those anomalies around the clock, right? That's something that beats a human any day. And it's something that's been noted, I think, since 2021 at the earliest in The Economist, that you should be using AI to detect these things early on. Examples I've seen are probably mostly like blocking malicious IP addresses, shutting down compromised systems or accounts, or even analyzing emails internally or web pages internally to block those phishing attempts more quickly. I'm sure for those on the call and those watching, if you follow secure frames like regular dialogue, you've probably seen that threat detection and response is just one of the 6 advantages of AI in cybersecurity. So I'm sure that as people become more knowledgeable in this, and as like LLMs keep evolving, this type of work, will be something that not just cybersecurity companies look at, but that maybe internal companies will start developing. So I think it's very helpful.
Makes sense. So Mike, what are the key advantages of leveraging AI in cybersecurity operations?
Yeah, definitely. I think honestly, building off of what Luciana said, a lot of it is scale. At the end of the day, there are many pieces that AI can inherently do more effectively than most humans, especially given any particular time period, pattern recognition, the speed at which things can be addressed or detected. But a lot of the core advantages, especially at an enterprise scale, is just the cost that it would take for a team to be on demand for a cyber command center or something like that is just not viable for a lot of organizations. And so bringing the scale of a whole expert team to every organization is what a lot of it comes down to. And that's across predictive pieces, threat detection, scalability, analytics around security, and just anticipating gaps. And also a lot of system visualization to enable, from the governance lens, leadership teams to make better decisions long term.
Sounds good. So my next question to Zeno is, how effective are AI algorithms in detecting and mitigating cyber threats compared to traditional methods?
I think what everybody's been saying is basically just the accuracy and the efficiency and the skill, which is true mostly if things rely on patterns or if you're feeding in external data as well. But I'm going more into the danger of just relying on that. You still need the traditional team, because there's some things that will still seem normal, will still seem unique, because it's very easy for just the mass fraud that happens or the mass phishing that happens, or even targeted phishing. And that's very easy to tell in terms of patterns for AI, right? Maybe not people so much, but there's definitely the patterns, there's definitely the IPs that are popping up, what threat has been popping up in East Asia, and now it's moving to the US or something like that, right? That's easier. But I think that if you, let's say there have been cases, there was one company that I knew that just used to have a security team, and now they're like, we don't have a security team, we have one person. And that I see Mike shaking his head. But they were just like, oh yeah, we don't need that many people on the team now. Let's just, AI is doing basically our SOC team's operations, and almost entirely. Mind you, this is like a smaller company, so maybe, but there's just so many things that could go wrong with that, especially if you're not constantly training it within your own data and with external data. But yeah, I think in terms of scalability and the ability to absorb information coming from many different sources at once, that's very effective.
Sounds good. I would agree on that because I've seen, like, especially in India, a lot of organizations have started using AI in different fields. Especially, I would say in last 1 year, even I have started using AI in like different parts of my like the daily routine. It is helpful, but I still believe that AI need to be supervised well as well. Like AI cannot just be, left alone. You take a help of AI, like whatever it generates, but you need to, at the time, I feel that supervision is important for AI as well. So Valeria, you have worked with a lot of NGOs as well. So what are the primary cybersecurity threats faced by NGOs working with sensitive data and AI technologies?
Thank you, Harshit, and thank you for the invitation to this awesome panel. I think one of the main things is the lack of information and skills, technical skills within NGOs. And I've seen it firsthand. Mostly we work in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. So that gap, it's even wider for those NGOs. And more what we're trying to do from our work on the Trust for the Americas is helping them to make use of the available data that they have, but they work with sensitive data, so often we have to like carry on conversations on both things, how to take care of this data in terms of cybersecurity, but also how they can use this data to make informed decisions and just scale up their impact. But most of the time, the problem and the challenge is that they don't have someone with the technical skills, and then they don't really have a strategy. They don't really know how to structure things around. And then there are many factors, but I think in terms of just focusing on within each NGO, the main challenge is the lack of technical skills and literacy also. And right now, it was just mentioned, I think, by Zino, about how it changes depending on the region. Like there are some cybersecurity threats that can be more trendy or happen more frequently in some regions. So I think it would be awesome to have, because right now we don't really do that, but I think it would be awesome to have to facilitate access to information to what is the ecosystem for those countries or that region in terms of what they should be aware of, what they should be focusing on, or what they should be prepared to face in terms of cybersecurity. Yeah.
Sounds good. So, Mike, how can organizations ensure that AI-driven cybersecurity measures uphold ethical standards as well?
If I had the answer to that, I would be rich and famous. But they can try. This is a moving target, and I think the piece here that's important is that it's a guiding aspiration, kind of a North Star for organizations. We don't necessarily always understand how AI-driven tools are working, especially some of the more advanced ones. And so what I'm seeing as a best practice in industry is to often have working groups, cross-functional working groups, and you usually want folks that understand the technology side and also the organizational behavior side. And just pulling these working groups together to really continue to iterate constantly on how the tools are being used and make sure that they're being used in a way that's effective and ethical. And part of that is being ready to respond if you discover that a tool being used, a pattern being used, et cetera, might have any type of bias or concern. At a tactical level, algorithm transparency, bias mitigation, thinking about privacy all the way around, regular audits. But it's the best practice is really staying on top of it and staying ready to change quickly, especially as we become more reliant on packaged tooling.
Makes sense. So, Zino, how does machine learning contribute to the effectiveness of AI-driven cybersecurity solutions?
I think mostly is data aggregation, but then depending on how you're feeding that data, the contribution is different. So some companies could opt for intelligence based on their own historic data. And then there's some companies that, especially the smaller ones, that maybe don't have that much of a history or their own data to feed from. They use a lot of external data feeds. I mean, other companies can also use that, but yeah, I mean, it allows you to do a constant training from whatever data you choose, and that's going to give you different informations. So that's one thing. That's on the intelligence part of things. But then there's the task automation, which would be sort of traditional scripting things, and optimizing those kind of scripts that you're doing for your day-to-day, just seeing alerts that pop up. To that, I would say, do you really need a new AI tool? Because sometimes you don't really need an AI tool. It's just, it sounds fancy, and maybe it's an add-on to another tool that you bought. But a lot of these things are still just basic, simple scripting, and unless they're really, I don't think this really answers your question, but that's my sort of judgment on adopting AI for the sake of adopting AI. It's just sort of, do you really need it, or is it just very small in terms of time saving, or in terms of even hiring, where it's maybe one person's job, right? I think that it also allows with vulnerability prioritization, so you can do the mapping of not just external, but within your own company. So there was one project that I did with one company where they had no common operating system and no common platform. This was a fairly big firm. They had about 2,000 to 3,000 endpoints. Well, so not so big, but fairly big. And in their case, if they had a vulnerability hit one of their teams, they didn't really know how it was going to spread. So at the time, they were not using AI. And I'm seeing if you adopted AI into this, you can maybe map out how exactly that would spread, or how if this team is affected, or if this team gets a certain piece of malware, how is that going to affect the rest of the organization? Because that had to be done manually, and it took a month. So that's a use case that I imagine would be good for prioritization, in terms of what to patch first.
I think in the big organization that can take an advantage in daily to day routine, it reduces your effort, but at the same time, again, I would say that you just need to have a look of the output as well, that what is coming into that. So my next question to Luciana is, can AI be used to effectively detect and prevent insider threats within organizations?
Yeah, I think short answer is yes. Longer answer is it depends. Any engineer on the call is probably cringing hearing that word, or phrase. But yes, I think companies can definitely detect insider threats. You just have to be willing to take on the time-consuming process that is training those ML algorithms and you have to have large sample data sets. So companies might not have the time and they might not have the data. But let's say you take that on, for sure, you can prevent unauthorized like data leaving your company if you can leverage known signatures. And a lot of companies don't have those, you know, readily documented or understood. But I'll say if organizations do put in the time, they definitely can detect and prevent. And obviously, there's lots of cybersecurity firms that are out there willing to do that legwork for you. But as Zino mentioned, it's on the organizations to see if it's worth the time, if it's something they can take on versus, you know, going externally. And I mentioned earlier, but with these public LLMs coming out with newer models every few months, I can only imagine that the process of training will get faster and easier. And this might be more appealing for organizations that want to take the data they have and be able to create those known signatures so they can prevent stuff in the future. So yes, but it depends what you want to take on.
Sounds good. So, Valeria, how can NGOs collaborate with cybersecurity experts and organizations to enhance their resilience against cyber threats?
Well, I think it's gonna depend also on the policies and regulations for each country, because what we've been seeing here in Brazil is that there are many ongoing discussions on the further regulations for AI and data, and then I think that will have a lot of impact on how each organization can approach their cybersecurity challenges and how they can blind for them and what they can do about it. Like taking into consideration those ethical and legal considerations for within the country that they are. Okay, look at that, like interesting. Samsung banned AI in its office. So like, I guess it depends on the compliance of the country and where they are and where they're operating. But yeah, maybe some like general literacy training would be essential, I would say, because then we also have like not just within the organization those cybersecurity threats, but also, for example, us that we work with youth, helping youth reskill and learn things and work with AI projects. And then there are also some cybersecurity risks on that. We were just reading about the threats that you can get on downloading, for example, open source models and the risks that they have to take into consideration and working with data, what it means for them. So like, and we also have to think about that, like not just teach the technical skills to those youth that we're training, but also help them understand the part of the risks and how to use responsibly those tools. So very complex, apparently.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think there are many ways to do that as well. So Zeno made an important point that Samsung interestingly banned all the AI tools. So building onto that, my next question to Luciana for you is how vulnerable are AI systems themselves to cyber attacks, particularly adversarial attacks?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I'll jump right into it, but I just can't help but think with Valeria's answer. I think of the analog that millennials might understand, but like when you went to LimeWire, for example, if you were using that and downloading something, you were a little bit cautious, right? We need to get back in the mindset of being cautious before we interact with these, you know, models that are out there or applications that we can go and download and use. But yes, so are AI systems vulnerable to cyber attacks? Absolutely. And I wonder if you read the NIST article that came out last month, because this is such a timely, timely question. But they were highlighting that the AI systems are vulnerable, but only to certain types of cyber attacks. And those vulnerabilities are the ones that these folks are manipulating. And it's really based on the behavior of the AI system as a whole. So what they do is they can cause these AI systems to malfunction because when you expose AI to like weird or untrustworthy data, you end up fooling it or poisoning it and it gets kind of lost. So I would say with AI systems, those in the cybersecurity field are always looking for signs of like evasion attacks or poisoning or privacy or abuse attacks. And I'll add that today there's no like right way or foolproof method to protect against AI if it's being misdirected. But that, as many on the call have already said, you have to stay in the know. You have to keep reading and keep looking at the guidance that's coming out because these are documenting the attacks that have happened and they're documenting, you know, what could have been done, what are some mitigation approaches that you should be taking on. So I would say, yes, they're vulnerable, but you have to be knowledgeable and be setting yourself up for success by looking at what's happened and preventing yourself, making sure that your systems wouldn't be susceptible to the same things.
Cool. So, Valeria, again coming back to you, uh, how do regulatory frameworks address the use of AI in cybersecurity, and what compliance considerations should organizations be aware of?
So I think in terms of regulation, I think what is coming is a lot of do it on the way as everything is happening, because I think it is how it will have to be because of the pace of how things are evolving. For example, we have the use case of the US, right? That they had to ban the AI assistants making calls for people because they had a case that they were using AI to call people with deep fake voices of Joe Biden. So and they had to introduce and pass that law to prohibit that. So like I think a lot of the things are going to be evolving that way, like having to just like act fast and see what is happening and what is the threat, and then going on that. But for what I've been reading about the AI regulations and compliance and what has been passed and discussed, I think cybersecurity always ends up, I don't know, it seems like it's not properly addressed, like, yeah, because I guess it is more complex because then you also have to take into consideration all data protection and privacy regulations, and then you get with a lot of regulations and a lot of discussions, and then on the other side you don't want to have such strict regulations that would just like slow down innovation for the startup ecosystem within your country. So then they're like trying to be too cautious, but at the same time like not having a negative impact on the organizations. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is something that is just like evolving on the way, it seems like.
Yeah,
And that can just be like holistic, like gathering a lot of things.
yeah, I think we just have to keep with the pace in India as well. Like there has been certain number of cases where the people were, using the images of celebrities or into something, making morphing kind of sense. A lot of things were happening as well. So, Mike, my next question to you is: what are the emerging trends and developments in the intersection of AI and cybersecurity?
Absolutely. I would echo everything, especially what Luciana said, that's been said about our understanding of these tools. And so happy to share some use cases with the disclaimer that emerging trends are often not what you want to bet your entire enterprise security on. But there's a number of things. One is autonomous threat hunting, and so specifically proactively looking for patterns, that vulnerability management, phishing detection, federated learning, and the one I'm most interested in is explainable cyber, and so in natural language or similar, making cyber decision making accessible to everyone in the organization, regardless of background, so that you can lean on other parts of the organization's understanding, their skills, their background, especially around human behavior, organizational behavior. And also there's some other more nuanced ones around policy enforcement, governance, patch management. But for the most part, it's the ones I described.
Sounds good. So, like diving into the future, my final question to Zino for you is, how do you foresee the role of AI evolving in the future of cybersecurity defense?
I've been having a lot of fun with this question. But from the attack perspective, okay, so technology advances the fastest when somebody is really funded with very little consequences, or is just researching for fun. So that's going to be a lot of the startups. And then the other side is people that are desperate, which is a lot of criminal enterprises. And that's where you're going to see where technology is going and where AI is going to be applied, before you hit these big enterprises, or before the B2B technology is built for them to use it, right? So I've been looking into what the criminals are doing, and I've been interviewing people that are sort of like dark web investigators, and a couple of FBI people. But obviously there's a obvious, very sophisticated phishing attacks, right? Which, like, to that end, it's also still the model of language processing to an extent, right? The detection. But one thing that I'm really interested in is Google just is working on a thing that does coding, like at a very basic level. So it's AI that just codes from nothing. It's not building on engineers. This is what I understood from like the articles that I read. It's not based on a baseline of engineers. It's just you give it a task and then it starts sort of coding on itself, right? And then there's a potential of this, which like the dark web's already talking about this. It's how do you do software generation that contains exploitations for completely undocumented parts of systems, which I guess you would call a 0-day, right? Except that there's no documentation on the 0-day. There's no bounty for it. You didn't sell it to Zerodium for $1 million, right? Because nobody knows what it is. It's just AI generated the code for the attack, and that's it. And that's what anybody knows. So that's one of the more sophisticated. And I think that companies, that the problem with that is that it could be expensive, or you need a lot of a very dedicated team, and the criminals are going to do it anyway, right? But companies, are they willing to pay someone to just do this all day, or teams of people to be doing this all day, right? And that's sort of a question. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for generating software, not just for the purpose of building up your own product, but also for testing out what the limits of your product are, and what are things that you've never even seen within what you've built. Things that have already been happening. And I don't know if you can pivot this. I completely shifted. Yeah, this is not defense. I'm talking entirely about attack. But I'm trying to see it in both lights. So for the deepfake things, right? I posted on my LinkedIn it was like a couple of weeks ago that a company, an international financial firm, lost 26 million, or like 25 point something million to an entirely deepfake call, which is very interesting to me, because it wasn't just the call, it's how do you deepfake the participants of the call? How much OSINT did you get on the people that were supposed to be on that call, right? This was a call that had, I don't know how many C-level people in it, and they were all fake. So there's a question of how do you pivot to, do we go back to the old spy techniques of like the Cold War, pre-Cold War era, right? Where you have to physically have a phrase or something. because now a Zoom call is not reliable, right? So that's like in the case of Zoom call, voice call, anything. Yeah. Luciana's like, we're gonna have to have code words. So it's like now there's no difference. Even if your cryptography is entirely safe, the nature of the thing that's being transmitted itself might not be. So now there's a two question thing. Normally security has just been the people error aspect, and then there's the cryptography password aspect, right? And now it's the people, the cryptography, and then this massive, insane social engineering / manipulation thing that's way beyond phishing. Now it's like, I am gaslighting you. I am a real person, and it's not. So that's a very interesting thing, and I don't know how companies can like pivot from the idea that technology is safe. I think you've seen that in law enforcement, where now they've been looking for when they say, oh, paper trail, they do not literally mean paper trail. So you'll only get caught on digital things generally, and it's much harder to trace criminals on a literal paper trail because it's moved so far from what it originally was. And I think that's the over trust in cryptography, which sounds really sad because I like cryptography. But yeah, and then there's the generation of bug hunting, which already kind of exists in the malware reverse engineering world. But I think that should be more widely adopted, and it's going to be easier to adopt it with AI. And then there's going to be I think there's going to be a lot of growth in the data protection system that goes beyond. We've usually thought about it in database structure or cryptography, and I think now it's going to have to be not just data anonymization, but also how do you can get into differential privacy or other kinds of technologies, but like how do you generate the same output without ever feeding AI the real data? And then how do you get rid of the bias that data might have? And that's an insane technical question, and I don't know if anybody's working on that, but that's something that has to be looked into because it's already a problem. And policy definitely can't even catch up. And I think, like Valeria, you probably know this, like policy normally works in these like 2 cycles, right? Where it's like the generic, we have this undefined problem, so we're going to give it a generic policy solution. And AI is beyond that. And then the next policy window is, this is a specific problem. There's a specific litigation that arose because of this problem. And now we have policy that's going to address that specific issue. And with AI, everything is overlapping. And there's no such thing as 2 clear policy windows. And I think companies don't know how, they are not going to know how to react to that because now they have the issue that's overlapping with the general issue that's overlapping with a specific issue, and policies that can't be made clearly because there's not enough data because the time is so short. So that's not even on defense or attack, but that is how companies should be looking to formulate their defenses in the next coming years, because I don't think policy knows how to do it, and I think technology is stagnant in the places that it shouldn't be. And crime is accelerating because there is no red tape to crime. So, yeah.
Pretty interesting points, actually. So it has been an amazing discussion so far. I would go for the final short comments from each one of you. Short final 1 comments of the overall discussion and your final thoughts on artificial and cybersecurity. Luciana, will start from you. Valeria will be next.
Great. I'm really glad we had this discussion. It's nice to just be talking about this because it's all unknown. So we have to go back to the age of what people might call gossiping. I'll call knowledge sharing. We need to know what's going on, sharing information to get better. I'll say, for those who know me, I'm generally an optimist. So while we're worried about what might happen using AI and cybersecurity in this space, there are positives. Use it to your advantage, use it to train data, use it to predict things, to detect things. So my ending comments would be, just get ready, stay ready. And those of us who are in cybersecurity know that that's kind of the model. Always be prepared, always err on the side of caution. I would advocate to keep doing that, but not to be afraid of AI, just to be knowledgeable on it.
Valeria.
Thank you. Awesome. Yes, and thank you for this space and the discussion. I think it's very interesting, and there's not really, at least in the region, I don't think it's that easy to find the talent with, because it seems like it is very specific domain skills, and then it is tough to find someone with the perspectives and the experiences and to know how to apply it. So I think the more that we get into conversations about how this applies for the region, then it's better, because it's definitely going to be different and very particular for each region and each country. So yeah, I think we have a lot of work on that, and especially on helping organizations that have this high risk to understand what they can do and what it means.
Mike.
And thank you again for bringing this group together. It's been fantastic. I think the only point I would make to close is just echoing everything that's been said before. These are all incredibly powerful tools. Understanding how to use them and acknowledging what we do and what we don't know about the different options that are available is incredibly important. But it's going to be a moving target, and being comfortable with these pieces, being familiar with these pieces, and being excited about how all of the topics that we've talked about can really help advance the space is going to be really key for each of us. So thank you.
Zino.
I've already gone off topic a lot, so I don't think I should go more off topic. In the interest of everyone, disclaimers. Not legal advice, not formal advice.
A lawyer
But
is sitting in front of you already. I will find you a law student.
just disclaimer, this is based on what we know and what we've read. May not be entirely accurate, but yeah, that's it. I'm not going off topic anymore.
Cool. So it's been wonderful to have you all, and it's been a pleasure to hold you. Thank you, all of you, to be a part of this show. And here we end the Cyber Chronicles, and we look forward to a positive future. There are challenges, but I feel, as Luciana said, we need to be optimistic about it, and we need to be visible, like supervising about it as well. So thank you everyone for joining.